The LASD is currently being investigated for having police gangs, and one of the people who's in charge of the investigation is Civilian Oversight Commissioner Patty Giggins. And a couple days ago, the LASD somehow acquired search warrants, and so they went to her home and started seizing materials. Computers, files, anything that could have information or data used against them. A couple days later, a judge told them to stop seizing materials, to which the LASD then fired their legal representation. I guess they weren't too happy that the judge ruled what they were doing to be, wrong. In other words, police doing police.
So in addition to municipalities being linked for decades, people who have been in sheriff seats, people who have been prosecutors, and people who have close relationships, and a lot of these local governments, people don't necessarily show up to vote, so these systems don't change much, which is important, and that's how you really change policing systems in this country sooner than, trying to get something federal passed. But again, the municipalities, they're so locked in and everybody's so cool with each other, and that's how they're able to do stuff like this.
Now, one of the first questions that came up is, how did the LASD even get this search warrant in the first place? After all, they went to a judge, brought it up to them, and the judge told them they would need a special master's to do so. Turns out they went to a different judge named Craig Richmond, and they signed the warrant. In other words, the sheriff's department is essentially being accused of doing an end run around the original judge who had already ruled that a special master would be required to review the seized items. In other words, police doing police.
Whether or not they just flat out let police officers get away with murder, or if, they coordinate and, take evidence or corroborate with one another in such a fashion that they don't go down. But again, they're the authority, and it's their job and their position to uphold their authority. And so stuff like this happens quite often.
So the LASD is being investigated for having police gangs, which are more common than you would believe. There's police and then there's police gangs within the police, usually more dangerous than the police themselves, but nonetheless. There's all these people who are involved in the party who are investigating the police, and the police didn't like this, so they went ahead and they obtained a search warrant in a rather childish way, right? It's like mom told them no and then dad told them yes, and so they started seizing all these materials and searching it, probably trying to find any information that could be used against them to ultimately lock away in a file somewhere where only they would have access to it, and then they got caught. Does that sound accurate to you guys? Is that a fair assessment? In other words, police doing police.
Like I pointed out, really the quickest way for us to enact change within law enforcement in this country is to get more involved with local elections and state elections. Because federally speaking right now, we're just pretty much in a deadlock. I mean, unless the Democrats have a supermajority and that supermajority is relatively progressive, then we're not going to get any type of, major overhauls passed through Congress anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. Again, so going after local municipalities is really how we can install people who have better ethics and better morals so that stuff like this doesn't happen quite as often. But, oftentimes it really can feel like there's really nothing we can do at all, but that just simply isn't true. We just need to really change our focus and get more involved locally, just like all these crazy right-wing nut jobs are doing, trying to replace all these people in these electors' positions. And it's effective, which just goes to show that local government and getting involved in local politics has very, very positive results or negative results, but you just got to do it.
Police gangs, police brutality, racism, they usually all play a part in each other. LA law enforcement in general just seems to operate a bit differently down there, but at the end of the day, I'm just hoping that the LASD is properly held accountable for this. Whether they admit it or not, they attempted to save their own asses, and they failed. They also tweeted out this garbage, so whatever they're alleging the LASD did, they definitely did it. This is absolute cringe. In other words, police doing police.
And it's really important that we continue to talk about these kinds of stories and not get discouraged because we don't see really quick overhaul, because people's lives are at stake, literally. People are rotting in jail who shouldn't be there. People who were just in circumstances of poverty, who maybe were selling this and selling that, and they got caught up maybe stealing something. Maybe they had a history of drug abuse and they get thrown in jail instead of being helped. We need to really change the way that our society views poverty and views economic issues and change our system and make it less punitive. It's important that we continue to highlight stories like this, and it's why we do this here at TYT, because this stuff is real, and it's some of the most important things that we get involved with to change, because You know, these people are walking around with guns and authority, and we can't just let them bully us.